Welcome to episode 4 of SIDEOUT with VNS, the volley video pod reaching out and engaging our fellow volley nerds in Nova Scotia and beyond. I'm John Elliott, Development Director for Volleyball Nova Scotia, and my co-host will be Megan Conroy, the Technical Director for VNS. Our two guests today are Raeesa Lalani, Head Coach of the ACAA Women's Volleyball Team at the University of King's College, and Darren Russell, the Head Coach of the AUS Women's Volleyball Team at St. Mary's University. Our conversation with Raeesa and Darren is split into 2 episodes. It was so good. In episode 4, our two coaches share some of the similarities and differences of their leagues, which is the Atlantic University Sport and the Atlantic Collegiate Athletic Association. In episode 5, Raeesa and Darren are going to dive into recruiting and share information that we hope athletes, parents, and club coaches will find useful. Check out the time links in the video descriptions to find a list of topics. Enjoy. To get started, we're gonna talk about our guests, share a short bio. We're gonna start with Raeesa. So Raeesa grew up in Calgary, Alberta. She had a 5-year playing career at Dalhousie University. She was a left side hitter, high flying lefty. She graduated from Dal with a Bachelor of Arts, and then also has a Bachelor of Journalism from the University of King's College in Halifax. She's currently the Artistic Director and Producer for the Prismatic Arts Festival. She's also a national broadcast voice in the Canadian volleyball community, covering AUS, U Sport, and Volleyball Canada national team events. She's also an MC, blogger, and social media manager. She hasn't retired from playing. She's still pretty active in co-ed volleyball, and she's the Vice President of Co-ed Volleyball Nova Scotia. As mentioned, she's the head coach of the University of King's College women's program. She's been in that role for 2 years, and she's an assistant before that with King's for 4 years. And she's been involved with Team Nova Scotia as a coach in the past. Darren grew up in the sport and volleyball hotbed of Toronto, Nova Scotia. Outside of volleyball, his background is as an educator and teacher. Darren has been the head coach of the St. Mary's Huskies women's volleyball team for 11 years and was previously an assistant with the SMU program for 8 years before that. For 6 years straight, so that's from 2009 to 2015, the Huskies were in the AUS final every year, and they won twice. Darren was awarded the AUS Coach of the Year twice. So during the 2010-11 season and then the 2011 and 12 season. Darren has been a head coach at the club and college level and was the head coach for the women's indoor team at the 2009 Canada Summer Games in Charlottetown, PEI. That team was incredible. It had the highest finish of an indoor Nova Scotia volleyball team ever at Canada Games, and they placed 4th, playing for a medal. Thank you both for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Before we get rolling, I have a personal story to share about the 2009 Canada Games team. I was lucky enough to be there, watch them play. I was there with the men's team, but I got to sit in the stands and watch their incredible run. I just think I was just blown away by their individual talent, but also how great of a team they were. How they carried themselves, how much they enjoyed each other's company, how much they enjoyed competing together. And just because I was really active on social media back in the day, 2009. So every year on August 27th, I get a Facebook reminder about a post I made. I'm going to share it. I think that Lauren Sears angry and hitting balls at you would be one of the most unpleasant experiences of a volleyball player's life.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that accurate?
Very accurate, yes.
Yeah. Awesome team. So as mentioned, Megan and I will be alternating leading the conversation with questions on our 2 main topics. And Megan, I believe you're going to get things started.
I am, yeah. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us. I was at those 2009 games too. I was with Team NL at the time, and we were definitely sitting in the stands. And I remember watching your game, and it was just incredible to watch. It was we were so proud as somebody from Atlantic Canada. I wasn't Nova Scotia at the time, but just to be able to watch one of our own teams be playing for a medal was incredible from the stands. I can only imagine from the bench that it was definitely a big moment. But so going back in time, we're gonna reverse it a little bit here for both of you guys. So when you were growing up, did you play sports? Were you a single sport athlete? Were you a multi-sport athlete? What were you involved in? Darren, we'll start with you.
I played hockey and soccer most of my life. I never really got into volleyball till grade 11. when Bob Pierce is like, all your aunts and uncles played at Dell, you must know some volleyball, come play volleyball. So I kind of got hooked into volleyball that way, and it took right off. So yeah, I did, growing up in the country, pretty much everything we could, was outside. So.
Yeah, and was that maybe like typical, or what have you seen in terms of boys volleyball? From my perspective, as a former phys ed teacher, it's a late entry sport for boys, like grade 9, grade 10. Often they're coming out of a different sport looking for a team sport to be involved in, and volleyball seems to be, one that they gravitate to. Any thoughts,
Yeah,
from your own personal experience?
totally. And it's, back in my day, it was even later, like the boys volleyball is a lot more relevant nowadays because there's more opportunity for them. But, we grew up, it was always hockey, baseball, soccer, and that's kind of all you played. And, volleyball was, I remember grade 11, it was all new to me. I'm like, what is this? And, obviously you guys know Bob Pierce, and he ends up, pulling people in, and it just kind of took off. And I just loved the sport, and having my aunt and uncle both play at Dal, and grew up with them, they just kind of washed off on me, and I loved it. So.
Awesome. Ray, how about you?
I actually kind of have a similar story. So I was very multi-sport. I had an older brother growing up, so I just copied everything he did. So I played soccer and badminton and track and field. And I actually was a really late bloomer with volleyball as well. I tried out for my junior high team in grade 9, and I made it, which was very exciting. And then my coach had talked about club, and I was like, what does that mean? What are you talking about? So I didn't really, start playing until high school. I had that kind of that year in junior high, and then I played in high school. And so once I did that, I fell in love with the sport. It seemed to work with the mechanics of my body. And so I just dropped every other sport and was like, zoom, volleyball for 3 years until university, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, we'll go from your playing careers to your coaching careers. And just interested what your introduction to coaching volleyball looked like. And we'll start with Ray.
My introduction, actually, it was a very full circle moment. So I was playing on Team Alberta in my 17U year, and I had gone to the Jasper volleyball camps, which is like in the mountains, and it's this big overnight week-long camp, like the most fun thing in the world. Still love it to this day. And I had gone for a couple of years because I just was like so enthralled with the idea of volleyball. And then when I was on Team Alberta, we ended up being the coaches at the Jasper volleyball camp. So like 1 year I was there as a camper, the next year I was there as a coach, which was a really interesting dynamic. So that was kind of my first taste of coaching. But then also before I played at Dal, I would come and do the Dal summer camp. So once again, a little bit kind of the player coach aspect there. And then when I was doing my master's at King's, once again, assistant coach, helping out with the team, and then now into the role of head coach. So it's always kind of just been dabbling in all the pockets to get to where it is.
Awesome. Darren, how about you?
Well, I went to the Nova Scotia Teachers College when it was open, and Suzanne Didmar was the head coach there my first year there, and then she ended up leaving, and I got hired along with Darren McCollum as their coaches, and it was kind of my first real introductory to coaching. And I said, wow, this is fun. You get to really work with athletes, and they were my own peers at that time, which was kind of different. But parallel to that, I started with Bob Pierce with the Truro Hub Club. So I got to work with Lauren Sears and Allie Beaver and all those girls when they were very young, and bring them up through. And that was kind of my passion, working with the young kids. And it just took right off. It was so much fun. They just, they always kept me on their toes, being, 13, 14 years old. And I just loved it. So
I think they probably kept you on your toes even when they were older at university, most likely.
Well, it was a real privilege having them come to university, because, like Lauren will even tell you, I taught her swim lessons when she was like 8, 9 years old. And, Lauren's been with me for so long. And, even players like Caitlin Cross, when I taught at Truro Junior High, grade 7, she'd be waiting to my, see, I'm not as good as Raeesa with this.
She's a
Caitlin would be
bringer.
waiting next to my car and say, oh, Mr. Russell, can you drive me home? I don't want to walk up the hill, and we were just such a close-knit group, and having Allie and Carrie Smith and all those guys continue on, it's been real special for me, and it's something I always cherish. So
Absolutely. So now you're fully grown coaches or older. If you could have if someone was talking about your coaching, what would be 2 or 3 words that you think they would use to describe you as a coach? We'll start with Darren.
I'm passionate. I'm very competitive. I don't like to lose. Not so much for me, but for the girls. They put in so much hard work that I want them to reap the benefits. But anyone you talk to will say I'm very, very organized, almost scary organized how I am. And I don't know, that's maybe my OCD, but it's something, I guess, that would describe me to a T.
Great. Raeesa.
It's funny because I was trying to think about this, and I was like, I should ask some people what they think about me, because I'm still so new to it. I don't know what I would describe. I think, though, similarly to Darren, competitive, definitely from just player turning into coach. I just have that innate desire and drive. And loyal, I think, would be one of them, just because, for me, being a younger coach and coaching players, like when I started with Kings, I was almost the same age as them. Some of them had tried out at Dallas, so I knew them more on like that personal level, and just kind of having that loyalty towards, not necessarily friendships, because you have to have that coach-player differentiator, but just, those are my girls. Like, I'll take care of them, even like the mother hen, I guess, at that point when you're as a coach. And yeah, I feel like I'm gonna have to shop around for words. I knew that question was there, but I still don't have the perfect answer for you yet.
I love it was like 1 or 2 words, and Raeesa had like 2 paragraphs.
Classic, eh?
Awesome.
It's as many of experienced coaches as like you guys and other coaches we've had on. That one always stumps everybody.
Yeah.
I think it would stump me as well. But if you guys could, story time with Darren and Raeesa, if you could share with us either a fond volleyball coach memory or maybe an embarrassing but fun coach memory, what ones kind of come to mind first? Darren, what do you think?
Oh, I knew you'd come to me first.
I'm so excited you did.
I don't really have a lot of embarrassing things about me. Like, when I coaching the young Truro Hub Club team, we would go away and they would dye my hair every week and it would be a different color. And I guess, that might be my most embarrassing moment. Like, I got a ton of embarrassing things about players, but for me, I'm
that might be a separate
shy
episode.
and quiet. I don't,
I want to see some of these pictures of young Darren.
Yeah.
He's like, there will never be released.
So unfortunately, I don't really have anything about me, but I raised a ton.
What would be, Darren, what would be one of your fondest coach memories? Like, what's something that really sticks out? I'm sure you have a ton because you've coached for a while.
Much. Like, my biggest, like, I'm in awe with watching local players develop to where they are now, and young players coming in to where they are when they exit. And not so much with the girls I work with, but just in general, like, players like Julie Moore, that's a local kid that's doing well. Race, I know we never really chatted a whole lot, but, you were amazing to watch on the court, and just seeing players like that come and develop and do something, in Nova Scotia, I think it's huge. And that's what I like watching in that. And I'm not a very outspoken guy, and I don't go and seek things, so I'm somewhat quiet, but I love watching the local kids and where they can go.
Well, and even that, I mean, that's so evident even in your past answer, talking about those young kids being introduced to them at 12 and 13 years old, and being able to see them, some of them go on to play for the national team and play in international competitions. I mean, to have a hand in that as a coach is pretty phenomenal. To be able to be around them in multiple facets, like being a teacher, being a community mentor, being a coach, to watch them from an awkward teenager into, some pretty successful women down the road is pretty incredible.
I guess, yes, Carrie Smith is a girl you guys would know well. And I told this story when she was getting inducted to the Hanseys Hall of Fame this past year. And when Carrie was, she was probably grade 10, we were playing club down in the valley, and we went out to eat with the team. And as we went in, we sat down together, and there was two other players next to us, and the waiter brings the bill and said, "Oh, are you and your wife on the same bill?" And I'm like, "My wife?" And of course, Carrie's like, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting a free meal out of this." And I'm like, no, and they bugged me the whole weekend about it, but that might be the most embarrassing thing.
Yeah, I remember being on the opposite side of a few Carrie Smith thunderous kills more than once.
Me too. So. I remember those very well.
Yeah, I think I still have a bruise somewhere. But Raeesa, how about you? Any fond coach memories, embarrassing coach memories, anything that comes to mind?
For my fond memory, it's actually recent, which really stands out, and it's kind of classic paragraphs. Here we go. Twofold. But for the University of King's College, so we've been really working hard over the past few years to develop this team. They came back into the league 7 years ago, and just to kind of build the team from there, and had, our first recruiting classes and all that kind of stuff. And this past year, the team made history in the program. So we beat them out to our crosstown rivals, not SMU anymore, Darren.
I actually watched you guys play. You guys had an incredible run in the playoffs this year. It was very good to watch.
It was incredible. So we beat them out for the first time in a league game, which was, a really big deal. And then, of course, winning against them in our quarterfinal, the first time we've ever won a playoff game. They were the 8-time champions coming into that. But it kind of goes in twofold with that is our starting setter and our starting libero. I've kind of been with them for their whole careers, and just seeing the growth in them as players. And, I remember, trying to, as an assistant coach, be there with them and try to help them grow. And then as I kind of took over as a head coach and really kind of had my hand in it, and I have to give a shout out to my assistant coaches, Abby Chenzi, Taylor Riddy, Andrew James. I got a SMU girl on my team now. This is perfect. But without them, I don't think our team would be where they are. Abby was working really hard with our setter, Isabel Roach. Taylor and Andrew were working with our libero, Taryn Neufeld. And the growth that I saw from them, I remember the last game after playoffs, I was crying more than anyone in that team room. And I was like, "You're the coach, hold it together. Like, this is not okay." But just the hard work that they put in and how much better they got was, to me, almost more of a proud moment than even anything to do with my playing career, which was something that was really incredible to feel.
Yeah, amazing. Those are the ones that stick with you, I think, throughout their careers. There's lots of wins and losses, but some of those first, I think one of my fondest is I was coaching a 14U club team. We were at nationals, getting hammered by Ontario 1 with some jump spin servers, and one of my girls got her overhand serve over for the first time ever.
Oh my gosh.
Ever in a game. And she served 7 in a row and got 5 aces. And I almost fell off my chair. And this was not that long ago, but it was just such an endearing moment. I was so proud of her that tops any, I don't know, some of the other wins or losses or other things that I had in my coaching career for sure. Thanks, guys. Those are great.
Yeah, I just enjoyed, you hear a lot of coaches and leaders say this, but we're in the people business. So it was really cool to just kind of hear it's, we're competitive and we love winning, but ultimately we love working with people and seeing people succeed and just being a small part of that equation. So awesome that you guys are, echoing that. You both put in a lot of hours working with student athletes and building your respective programs. Maybe you can each talk a little bit about how you balance volleyball with every other thing going on in your lives, other roles, family, relationships. What does that look like? Raeesa?
I think for me, honestly, I don't feel like there's much of a difference just because I've gone from, high school playing club and then to university playing varsity volleyball and then to a career now. And in the evenings it's volleyball and the weekends it's volleyball. So for me, I feel like that time has always just been allocated to that anyways. I think actually on the contrary, if I didn't have volleyball, I would be I need to fill this void. What am I going to do? So I think that's just kind of the way my life has been for over a decade that it doesn't seem like a balancing act. It kind of just seems like normalcy.
Great. Darren?
A lot of practice.
Yeah, I would agree with what Raeesa is saying. Like, I've been doing this for so long that, you know, all of a sudden there's no school now. I'm like twiddling my thumbs, like, what am I going to do? But it's very busy. Like, I'm probably, there's a handful of coaches in the this youth sport that are only part-time, and I'm one of them. So, you know, I'm at school from 7:30 in the morning till I get home at 3:30, and then it's like scrambling to get supper ready before my wife gets home to feed the kids. And then as soon as she gets home at 5:30, I'm gone to SMU and back home for 10. I'm totally you know, on the road all the time, and my wife is amazing to allow me to do this. You know, I try to get in as many as my kids' sports as I can when, you know, we're off in that. But, you know, hands down, besides my wife allowing me to do this, my assistant coaches are by far the best people around me. And they're just amazing and with what they do. And I'm not a delegator, and you know, I kind of look at coaching as it's a family thing, and we're all in it together. And you know, Steve Simmons, Hillary Sears, Lauren Sears, they just bring so much to a team, and it's just awesome to have them work with kids and free up some of my time here and there. And I've been fortunate.
Yeah, that's a pretty stellar coaching staff. We have there lots of experience and different things bringing to the table.
It's all you, Megan.
So we're gonna dive into kind of one of our two main topics. So we kind of heard through the grapevine we had a lot of athletes watching our past couple episodes. So we wanted to take some time to focus in on some topics that are relevant to them. So again, that's why we're so thankful that both of you could join us, because you both represent coaching teams in different leagues that are available here for post-secondary play for athletes in Nova Scotia. And so we're going to dive into talking about your leagues, some differences, some similarities, just to kind of hopefully share some information with our membership and our athletes out there who are wondering if, you know, or know they want to play post-secondary, are wondering, can I play post-secondary? What options are out there? And hopefully be able to answer some questions for them. So the first kind of chunk we're going to dive into is talking about some of the differences between the ACAA and the AUS. So the first kind of topic we're going to talk about is just the general schedule of your leagues, you know, when it starts, when it ends, how many teams, what's kind of the structure of in a typical year. This is June 1st for anybody watching, so we're still all kind of self-quarantining during this pandemic. So the upcoming season's a little bit in question, but let's talk about how things have gone in the past. So Darren, can you just give us a snapshot, general schedule, start and end date, teams, playoff structures? What does the AUS look like?
Yeah, so for the AUS, we're allowed to start, I think it's September 3rd, and we typically go till mid-March, 1st of March with playoffs. I can't speak on other AUS schools, but I know for us, we practice typically 6 days a week, and usually we take a day off after a match, depending when it's at. So, you know, within the AUS, there's 6 teams, and, you know, I'm assuming, you know, John could speak from Dal, or so could you, Megan, because you also coach there. But typically, I think most AUS schools practice 6 days a week. Would that be correct by saying?
I think so, from my experience in the past. Anyway, it's sometimes it could be less depending on, you know, what time of your season.
What time of your season you're through?
Yeah. Sometimes if you have 2 games in a weekend or things like that, it might slightly shift. But I would say certainly in the preseason, you're looking at 6 days a week for sure.
And typically, we are done the middle of November or the second week of November for Christmas break, and then we start up again late December, early January.
Yeah, and do you want to just quickly talk about playoffs this year? The AUS changed their playoff structure from the past. Typically, it was well, I guess way back when there was 9 or 10 teams in the league. I think it was the top 6 made it, and then one year I think everybody made playoffs, and then it was top 4, and then this year it changed totally in the playoff structure.
Yeah, we used to do a tournament style where the top 2 seeds would get a bye to the semis. Um, this was the first year the top 4 went on, and we did more of a 2 out of 3 series, which I think was a real hit. Most of the coaches all thought it was a great idea. How it worked is the highest seed would be your host school for that 2 out of 3 series. So I believe Dal hosted UMB the first round, and we hosted Acadia at our school. And the fans were fantastic, I think, for both schools. And then whatever your highest seed is going into the finals will host the finals as well. I know some coaches want to see a 2 out of 3 travel back and forth. Just with Memorial, it becomes very costly. So this was kind of the first year doing it, and the feedback was through the roof by both the fans and the coaches and players. So we're definitely looking forward to it as the years keep coming.
Yeah, I think I was at almost all those games, except actually I think I missed the final. We were hosting the Paralympic qualifier that week, but the atmosphere the week before for both semi weekends was phenomenal. Even though they were both going on in Halifax, like the stands were still packed in both schools. It was pretty crazy. So thanks, Darren, for that. Ray, what's your league? What's it all about? What's the structure? How many teams?
So we had 9 teams this past year, which is great. It's really exciting to see, especially I've been on the other side of it when I played at Dal and saw all these teams diminishing. So we actually have been letting teams into the league over the past few years, which is awesome. So we have 9 teams. Our schedule is pretty much the same. We are considered a winter sport. But we start, our first tryout is the first day of school. I think it's usually around September 5th. And we start in September. We have our exhibition season September, October. And then there's something called the ACAA tip-off tournament, which is an annual tournament that happens every year. It's an exhibition tournament where we play all the teams in the league. It's just 2 games, or 2 sets rather. So that's really nice, kind of seeing all the teams. And then we start our regular season. It's usually the last week of October or the first week of November. We play our games all through November. Sometimes it spills into the first week of December, just depending on the schedules. And then, we kind of have December exam period, sometimes a training camp to come back, and then league games again in January and February. And our playoffs are traditionally 1 week before the AUS playoffs. This year they were on the same weekend because of the new format. It kind of just worked out that way because there were so many weekends with the new format. But traditionally we're usually the second last weekend of February, and then nationals would be the first or second weekend in March, depending on where they are. So it is the same length of a season. We have 21 games, but that has been changing. There was 24, 21. This, obviously we don't know what's going to happen this year. There's been talk of 18. So we're kind of different every year, figuring out kind of what works best, it seems like, for the league, just as more teams come in. And then personally for Kings, so we practice about 5 times a week. It is a little bit lesser of a practice schedule than it was in the U sports. Like when I was playing at Dal, I know that we do practice a little bit less. So we have 3 full team practices a week. Then we have 1 individual practice a week, and then we have 1 service league practice a week. So that's kind of the way that we've structured it. Just because for us, especially at Kings as well, academics, and I know that's true with all schools, but for us, we do put a really heavy priority on academics, and it is a tough school, so the programs are tough there. So that's a nice balance. So I think just, a piece of information, I guess, for athletes, if they're listening, just knowing both programs and being in it. Our program is not as intense, I would say, kind of on the practice schedule side. Like you do have a little bit more of that free time. Obviously, we kind of have our rules, and people are in the gym, lifting weights 3 times a week. We have Friday morning sprints. So there still is a lot of gym time as well, and playing volleyball, and as well as strength and conditioning. But I do find that for a lot of athletes who maybe don't want to commit to that heavy of a schedule as a varsity athlete, the ACAA, and for Kings, I don't know necessarily the other teams, it is a good alternate if you're looking to still continue playing varsity, but you don't want to commit, 5 hours a day every day to it. So that's kind of a difference that I've found within that. But yeah, outside of that, I think they are pretty similar in their setup.
Yeah, and you mentioned some exhibition play that your team might partake. Darren, do you guys have exhibition play as well during your season?
Yeah, typically we like to do a big trip into September, 1st of October, and then usually a big one December 27th, kind of the end of December, 1st of January. And we typically do 2 trips a year, and then we may have a couple other teams just come in and scrimmage against us at home. I know Mount St. Vincent from your league will come in and scrimmage 2 or 3 times a year with us, and Mount A has scrimmaged before and that. So.
Yeah. So talking a little bit about some of the off court things that coaches always have to deal with. How does your team travel? Within your league, even for exhibition, do you guys have to plan and book all that? Does what kind of support does your athletic department provide? Where you go, when you go, is that kind of up to you? Darren, I'll throw to you first.
Yeah, for my program, I'm actually in charge of everything. I have to do all the bus bookings, flight bookings, meal planning, absolutely everything. I can get help, like if when it comes to flights, if I know what flight I want, I can send an email, and our secretary will end up booking things for me in that case. But typically, I'll say, okay, this is the time our bus is going to pull out, and I'd rather stay at one of these 2 hotels, and then. Right. Kind of do the bookings there.
And so when you guys travel from, within your league games, you're typically going by bus, except obviously to Memorial.
Yeah. Any league play, we're by bus, except Memorial. Obviously, we fly in and then take rental vans. When we go up to Quebec, we have driven up before from team bonding, but the older I get, the less I want to drive that far. So we've been flying a lot lately, up there and back. We've been down to Boston for exhibition games before in September, and we did drive those times just for some team bonding once again. But I don't know, I'm not getting any younger, and sitting in a cooped up van with 6 female athletes is quite long.
Yeah, where's your nerves a little thinner than maybe it used to?
Well, in the music they listen to now, I'm a big Bee Gees guy, and my players will tell you.
Love it. I need to be in your van. I live for like 70s, 80s rock. That's my jam. Raeesa, how about you? When you guys are traveling around, where does your league go? Like what schools are included? You guys do go to New Brunswick and PEI?
Yeah, so we go to New Brunswick, PEI. All of our traveling is on the bus. So there is no Newfoundland team, though I know there are some teams that are interested in joining the league. So who knows in the future?
Vying for a spot.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I'm really lucky, actually. I have an incredible athletic department, and because it's such a small school, everything is so close-knit. So we have Neil Hooper and Trish Miles, who are the athletic department at Kings, and so we kind of work together, but Trish, essentially the athletic department does the bookings for us, but they'll ask me, when do you want to go up? What time do you want to go up? How many hotel rooms do you need? All that. And I kind of set out a little outline, and then they put it all together for me, which is really nice. But yeah, just between Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI is where all the teams in our league is. Is that all of the questions?
Yeah, yep, you got it. Yeah. All right. One last question for me for this section for both of you. When athletes are looking at playing post-secondary volleyball, if they're going from their own club experiences, clubs getting costly these days by the time they kind of pay for travel and whatever else needs to be paid for, gym time and all those things. Does an athlete have to pay to play ACAA U Sport, like for your, and I know maybe that answer might be different depending on the institution, but I'll ask you guys to answer from your perspective. Does your athletic department cover everything for athletes? Do they ever have to come out of pocket? What could an athlete expect? Ray, I'll start with you.
Sure. So for us, our athletic department covers everything for our travel, our hotel, our buses, meal money. So we're really fortunate that pretty much the majority of playing for us is covered. The one thing, we do get part of our gear covered, so like spandex and t-shirts, practice shirts, all that kind of stuff, but players are obliged to bring their own shoes, for example, or knee pads, or if we get matching track suits or backpacks. I actually usually just personally host a fundraiser once a year to try and cover the team's uniforms. Our jerseys and things like that are provided by the school, so it's really just kind of the track suits and jackets and additional gear. But yeah, we're really lucky that the majority of things are covered. And actually, I will give a shout out as well, again, to the athletic department. I know I keep doing that. But for the first time that I understand, our program, actually, we do have athletic scholarships and awards that we can give out now. So we have a new president at our school, Bill Leahy, who is a really big avid sports fan and really understands the importance of our city athletics. And then, of course, Neil, our athletic director, has been working really hard. We had some donors, alumni that have created scholarships. So we're even lucky that we actually have some athletic awards to give out, which is incredible. And we're so lucky to have that.
Awesome. And I think we'll probably touch on athlete support specifically a little bit down the road, but that's a great point. So Darren, what about you guys? If an athlete's coming in to play for SMU, can they expect to have to kick in some dough somewhere along the way?
No, we actually cover everything from all your playing gear all the way to flights, hotels. They get a meal per diem for every trip we take. If a player doesn't want to wear our team sneakers, then they will have to purchase their own sneakers of their choice. But if they want their own team sneakers, then they have to wear kind of what our sponsor is. But yeah, no, everything's covered.
Okay, awesome. Good news for many athletes listening.
Yeah.
That's some great support from both those athletic departments, though. I know it's not the case with every school, so that's something great that SMU and Kings have put forward.
Yeah, just a follow up to that question. In my 1 year of being a head coach at the ACAA, again, everything was supported by the athletic department, but exhibition travel, like our exhibition trip, I think we took at Christmas, we went to Quebec for a tournament, wasn't. Or a very small part of it was covered. Would exhibition travel be something for both your schools that would also be covered, Darren?
Yeah, once you're with the team, you're with the team. So if we go away in September, we go away with Christmas, flights, hotels, food, everything's covered.
Awesome. Right?
Awesome.
For us, it's a little bit of both. So, for example, I mentioned the ACAA tip-off tournament, which is a built-in exhibition tournament. That is all covered by our athletic department. If we want to do anything additional, so for example, if we were going to go on a trip or go somewhere like that, we would do it as a fundraising. And that's something that we would plan way ahead of time. So myself and Neil would discuss, and I'd say, I want to take the girls somewhere in December. Okay, we're going to fundraise for that. So there would never really be the expectation out of pocket from the athletes if we could fundraise enough for it. But if not, that would be a conversation that we would have with the athletes to make sure that it would be feasible for them. But the intention is to fundraise for any additional exhibition.
Awesome. And you guys talked about a lot of kind of the off-court differences, which actually was a lot of off-court similarities, which is really cool to hear. What would be some on-court differences or similarities between the leagues? Raeesa, we'll start with you.
That's a good question. I mean, I'm just thinking more of the logistics. So for example, at Kings, we have one court that we're able to use, whereas I know, when I played at Dal, we had 2 courts that we were able to use. So just the way we tailor our practices, but I don't think that really affects the athletes very much. I think just the initial thought that comes to my head is just the amount of time that we're on the court. I would say I find a pretty big difference between a U Sport team and an ACAA team with the time on the court. But I also had my athletes last year demanding more practice time. So which was amazing. I was like, okay, we're doing morning practices. That's the time we can get the gym. You want it, you better come in early. So I think, building that team and having that culture, and like I said, just really driving that competitiveness home and having the athletes that are bought into the system. I mean, if you want more gym time, we'll give you more gym time. We would never say no to that. And I've seen such a difference even from my time being at Kings, from when I started to now, of how much more and how much it is starting to look kind of like that U Sports team.
Cool. Darren, what would be some on-court differences or similarities between the 2 leagues?
both leagues, I think, have really, really improved so much over the last couple of years. And, they're very similar. I know, your guys' Kings team, you guys were awesome to watch this year. And you look at the past college teams with Mount St. Vincent, very tough team nationally. And, and I speak to them just because we typically scrimmage against them earlier in September. And there's players that could definitely play in both levels and do, very, very well. I guess I would agree. I agree with what Raeesa was saying, just with practice times and that. Typically, we can get 2 courts. Mind you, we may not use 2, but they're available to us. And with varsity, we kind of have first choice of when we want the gym, and then they'll book everyone else around us. So I guess I would agree with everything you said.
Great. And I'll get you each to kind of speak to your leagues, and maybe just the level of play within your league, as well as how like your conferences compare to other conferences nationally within either the U Sport or CCAA. And maybe Darren, we'll start with you. So level of play within your conference, and then how it compares to other conferences.
Yeah, having 6 teams, it's really competitive. And I've said this for the last number of years, any team in our conference can beat any other team depending on who shows up. It makes it fun. It makes it competitive. And you look at the AUS nationally, we've been very successful against the Quebec teams, Ontario teams, and Dal's been incredible at nationals the last number of years with some of the Western teams. So we've definitely turned a lot of heads nationally coming out of the AUS for sure.
Great. Raeesa?
I would say in the past couple of years, I've seen that gap become bridged in our league. I think there was a bit of a disconnect between the top team and the last teams in the league. But in the past couple of years, I think just the growth within the whole league as a whole has been immense. And there's just, same thing, we saw Dal AC and Kings in the quarterfinals. That hasn't been seen before. So I think, each team is growing. And for the first time this year, I would say, it could have been anyone's game. I think obviously Holland had a really great track record and they came in kind of on top, but they could have been taken down. Like, I think that's how close. And once again, like you said, Darren, it's who shows up. And I don't think that traditionally has been how it's been in the ACAA. So I think that the league is getting super strong. And, you can see, like you said, some of the players could be interchangeable in both of the leagues for sure. On the national stage, I haven't been to it with Kings, obviously, but I think that there is still a little bit of room for growth from the ACAA, but I think that will happen as our league continues to get stronger and teams are more competitive. We don't necessarily always have, or some teams don't have the privilege or the ability to go and play those teams out west. So when we go to nationals, it's still kind of that scare. So it's almost like how the AUS was a few years ago before that started building up. I think we're on that cusp as well, where we're getting there. Once our league becomes more competitive, we're going to be able to compete against each other more to get ready and prepare for the national stage.
Thank you for checking out SIDEOUT with VNS episode 4, where we've talked with Raeesa and Darren about what volleyball looks like in their 2 conferences, the AUS and the ACAA. Hop over to episode 5 to hear Raeesa and Darren share their thoughts on recruiting, and again, try to fill in some of the blanks for athletes interested in playing post-secondary volleyball.